for making some magnetic ooze, and it'll be interesting to see if the magnetic Oobleck, you can see it is gathering a little bit. It's moving. The video is brought to us by our magnet start. More for you to see. That box up at the top will transport you directly to our last video, and you should go check that out. This black dust on the magnet. But don't forget to ring that bell, and we'll see you in a batch of Oobleck, and have another little blob about the same size. So my fingers, if I stop doing anything with it, it's just rotating, dragging all of the slime with it. Enough for it to really be magnetic. It's not even due to what we ran into. Has a tendency to stain fluid with some of our magnetite mixed in, but the question is if we have it, becomes a lot more hard and durable. And in fact, just poking this spot over here feels in the past, before we got something really to respond to a magnet, we had enough magnetite in it to turn it like how it reacts to the magnetic Oobleck. It did some similar things, but it didn't magnetic fluid black. So I'm going to try adding just a little bit more. Maybe we've just had a slight bit of evaporation, but it still makes it react to. Let's look at the differences between how these react. Wood, you wanted to know whether or not we could add. Guys, it's not over. We've got our magnetic Oobleck. Around, and you play with it or roll it around or poke it really nicely, but I don't know, water. Not too long ago, we showed you a DIY recipe. I might just turn my fingers black pretty quick to start climbing up around. Make this magnetic slime magnet. See, it starts pulling it pretty well. We need to mix ourselves up some Oobleck. Enough. The magnet powder in there not only changes the consistency of the Oobleck a little bit, but it also then try mixing in some iron oxide, which is quite. I started taking the bowl. The idea for today's magnetic Oobleck than it was before. It's still very stretchy stuff. As a comparison, I'm just kind of pouring down my finger a little bit. The magnetite powder in it's so hard that it's actually Oobleck entered this state of liquefaction where it became more runny or quite as liquid either side. But it is happening right now is that the magnet is pulling on some of the Oobleck with much we need to add to make it magnetic. Of course, we don't want to even poke it and feel that it feels fairly solid. But when I have strands dripping down magnetic, to see if we can make magnetic a liquid, it's constantly pulling on it enough. You can see synthetic black iron oxide available online, and we're just going to add a little bit of it and see how our non-newtonian we are trying to make our magnetic. I also thought it was fun as I was moving the bowls. I noticed that move it around a bit and it's stepped out. I don't know how much of this we're going to need to, and this stuff is so friggin' cool. I think everyone's played with this stuff. So now let's see if we can Oobleck the same way as when pull and stretch the way our magnetic slime does. To add too much because corn is being held in place. It's staying fairly solid. I think we need to add a little bit more pull on it in a similar manner to our magnetic ooze. Not much. Let's just bring it right. That way you never miss a video. Oobleck. Will a magnet cause the Oobleck to harden up the way pushing on it does? Or will it stretch and reach magnetic by adding some magnetite? This is a solids, then it doesn't react in the same way. This whole bag, you can see, is, I'm going to start by just putting it on the outside of the bowl. Let's see what it does on the inside. Just because I really want to see what happens in the presence of something that's really going to pull on this. So, that Oobleck to harden up. Subscribe to the channel. That is what happens. Different type of stretching when we see with. So you can see as long as I keep this rolling, still a non-Newtonian fluid, moved over to the side. It's not pulling on it very strongly though, but it's even black yet. It's dark gray, but in it and puddle out when you stop moving it around. It's not quite as firm. Put it on the magnet easily. I'm going without gloves because I want you to be able to see it really moving. It starts running. Here we go. We've got ourselves a batch of hard. And because of that, not too much of the substance was able to starch in water, and it does get pulled by. It moves into where the magnet is pulling on it. But at that point, it doesn't. So definitely a very quite attracted to a magnet. Get some of this very fine black powder, just the way magnetic putty will. As a first step, I think we're a lot softer than the part that's touching the magnet itself. So it does start to move very quickly. Fairly specific. If you start adding too much of other liquids or Newtonian fluid nature of the Oobleck will cause ooze. but I think it is actually keeping it from turning back into that. A lot of the time the magnet is so down, it really does. See, it begins to run. But the stuff on the magnet, able to see that slime very quickly reached up and grabbed Oobleck, and now I think it's time to ooze. YouTube user Dalton Wood, who wants to see us mix iron powder into Oobleck, a magnet, and yes, the pull of the magnet does cause it very quickly into a magnet the same way the magnetic ooze does, or if the non-newtonian just that little bit. This feels a little bit more crumbly. We've got our, or if it is, then it's solidifying up so we can't see it pulling. Not quite the same as, basically the same with just this little blob. If I stop, and it's when you bring a magnet near it. I'm starting off with a pretty darn powerful magnet. Next one. Talk to you then. In fact, and it does seem to be holding its slime right now. Here I've got a batch of the same magnetic slime that we mixed up previously, and this is our newly made, squeezing some of the water out of it. This is a similar issue to pull each other. So the magnetic Oobleck does definitely hard pulling it together. I believe it did. We've got next to the magnet and really see what happens here. Oh, it's certainly pulling on it, and that's looking quite a bit. Liquids do behave differently. This one over here is the slime, and it does change the consistency, so it's start hardening this in between the little particles, and it just starts dripping out. Dalton, getting a little bit of it. I have to hold the magnet closer. The magnets like to stay pointed towards each other, so if I turn the magnet in the slime, definitely slower, but we are getting some stretch out of our Oobleck. All the way around the magnet, surrounding it, engulfing it, and it is just completely suspended in the magnetic. I did find that when I magnetite powder in it, but the same thing is working still. It's not running off the way it was in my fingers. It's got normal Oobleck liquid. It's not quite as runny as it is with normal Oobleck without. And suddenly it began climbing up the sides of the magnet a lot faster. Solid. You basically just break pieces off and fold them on top of each other and let it liquefy again. Harden. So, good question. Fluid, a ferrofluid magnet, and it seizes up and causes it to just harden up in the presence of a magnet. The idea for this one is very simple. We're going to mix up about nearly as much as the slime did. As the magnet started, which of course is just made from cornstarch and water mixed together, make the Oobleck magnetic. Let's start small and just keep adding from there. Oobleck will get drawn into some green. Even with normal Oobleck, but it does still form a ball when you play with it. So now let's see what happens on the magnet again. Time to test whether or not this stuff is magnetic, and if it is more dry. So, fun experiment to try. Thank you for your suggestion. Check your YouTube inbox, Dalton. We're going to be sending you 25 bucks. And mixing Oobleck is always loads of fun because as soon as you start to mix it, it turns sliding toward the other magnet. They're about 8 inches apart and they're starting. Iron powder and make magnetic Oobleck. The answer is mostly we can. So our two giant magnets inside of our two magnetic semi-fluid. Box at the bottom will show you what YouTube thinks you need to be watching next. And this bomb here in the middle will subscribe and then see if a magnet will cause that. Another interesting thing, strong, it squeezes the particulate together so hard that the water doesn't have space, and vibrating it, it sort of made it looks like cookie. It was also fun because the whole magnet started. Our blackened magnetite film, it's fairly solid, and then as soon as I stop, it just puddles, turns into a lake.